The morning light trickled lazily through the blinds, casting a warm, honeyed glow across the kitchen floor. It was one of those rare, serene moments when the world felt in perfect balance. My dog Baxter snoozed contentedly at my feet, his soft snoring a gentle reminder of the quiet joys in life. Nothing could disrupt this peace. Or so I thought. Our neighborhood was a tapestry of manicured lawns and pastel-colored houses, each one nestled snugly beside another like pastel confections in a tidy box. It was here that the specter of the Homeowners Association loomed large with its unforgiving rules and whispered judgments, and at the heart of this bureaucratic beast was Karen. Her presence was as predictable as the sunrise and just as inevitable. She was the self-appointed guardian of our suburban sanctum, her authority unquestioned and unyielding. Karen's first foray into our lives was fleeting a gust of wind through an open window. She appeared as if conjured by some ancient incantation to inform me that Baxter's barking, his happy, exuberant barking, was a disturbance. I had listened, nodding politely as she catalogued the sins of my innocent dog with a fervor reserved for courtroom dramas. The first seed of discord had been planted, though I refused to let it take root. I offered her a slice of the apple cake I had just baked, hoping to sweeten the air between us. But Karen was immune to such olive branches. She declined, her eyes hard and unyielding. Her refusal lingered in the air, a silent declaration of war. In the days that followed, Karen's presence became a permanent fixture. Like a hawk circling its prey, she watched, ever vigilant. Her petty actions were almost poetic in their precision. A note slipped under my door, reminding me of the exacting standards for lawn maintenance. A pointed glance at the slight scuff on my mailbox. Each act a quiet symphony of disdain. I chose not to engage. It wasn't passivity, but a kind of quiet power, the kind that comes from knowing who you are and refusing to be swayed by the shifting tides of someone else's storm. I found solace in the simple act of tending to my garden, coaxing life from the soil. With gentle hands, nature, unlike Karen, never judged. Baxter, oblivious to the human drama unfolding, remained his joyful self. His tail wagged with the fervor of 1,000 tiny metronomes keeping time with the rhythm of our lives. He was my steadfast companion, an island of joy in a sea of suburban monotony. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to hate Karen. Her pursuit of control, her need to assert herself over the minutiae of our lives, spoke of a deeper struggle, a battle she fought alone beneath the veneer of her perfectly sculpted facade. I wished her peace, even as she sowed discord. Then one afternoon, a new chapter began. The sound of raised voices, like an orchestra reaching its crescendo, shattered the fragile calm. A confrontation, a culmination of grievances both real and imagined. It was an encounter caught on the ever-watchful lens of modern technology, the camera, a revelation. An unexpected turn that would shift the balance and set the stage for the unraveling of Karen's reign. In that moment, as police arrived and the air crackled with tension, I understood that the tides were indeed changing. The seeds Karen had sown bore fruit, but not the kind she had envisioned. The world watched, and the story of the neighborhood's unlikely heroine began to unfold with all the irony life could muster. The morning sun crept over the horizon, its rays slicing through the bedroom blinds, in golden fragments that danced on the walls. I lay awake listening to the soft rhythm of my dog's breathing, a much-needed anchor amidst the chaos brewing outside our door. Yesterday's encounter with Karen lingered like the unpleasant scent of a forgotten garbage bin. Stubborn and intrusive, life in a homeowners association was meant to be a peaceful arrangement, But Karen had turned it into a theater of petty warfare. She was the self-appointed director crafting absurd rules with the flourish of a dictator and the creativity of a bad novelist. Each new decree arrived in pristine white envelopes, as if the paper itself bore witness to her righteousness. Today's envelope waited in my mailbox, its crisp edges a testament to her relentless pursuit of control. I could almost hear the paper whispering her grievances as I opened it. The latest rule: no dog leashes longer than 6 feet. Apparently a matter of community safety. It seemed less a concern for safety and more an excuse for surveillance, her eyes like searchlights glaring from behind her lace curtains. With every rule came a citation as precise as it was. Petty. Last week it was for my lawn, a single dandelion daring to defy the uniformity she cherished, a yellow rebellion swaying defiantly in the breeze. I imagined Karen scowling as she scribbled on her notepad, her indignation as vivid as the flower itself. Whispers of her gossip slithered through the community like a serpent leaving a trail of discord. I heard them while walking my dog along the tree-lined paths. Neighbors whose names I barely knew now greeted me with wary glances, as if I were complicit in some unspeakable crime. Karen's tales had a way of distorting reality, her voice a siren's call that lured sanity into the depths of absurdity. In this strange microcosm of suburban life, her power was both fragile and formidable, a queen without a crown ruling with little more than fear-mongering and paperwork. As I walked my dog that afternoon, I felt the weight of her scrutiny invisible, but tangible as the breeze that ruffled the leaves. Her shadow loomed large, an entity that seemed to feed on the discontent she sowed. Then, as if to punctuate her latest attempt at domination, the sound of sirens broke the afternoon's quiet. Blue and red lights painted the street in surreal strokes, their arrival an unexpected twist in Karen's narrative. Amidst the commotion, I caught a glimpse of her face, framed by her ever-present curtains, eyes wide with a mix of triumph and trepidation. The police footage from yesterday had surfaced a testament to her zealotry, its reality stark and undeniable, casting a new light on her antics. Her reign was slipping, her power eroding beneath the weight of her own arrogance. Quietly, I realized this was not just about a dog or an HOA. It was about standing firm against tyranny, no matter how small. The absurdity of her rules, the injustice of her citations, the venom of her gossip. They were all pieces of a puzzle she could no longer control. As I stood there, leash in hand, the neighborhood felt different, the air charged with the promise of change. Karen's voice might have been loud, but the truth spoke louder. The curtain on her stage was beginning to close, and in its place a new act was about to unfold. The day dawned with the kind of bright, optimistic sunshine that felt at odds with the churning pit of tension in my stomach. I watched the light filter through the blinds, turning familiar shadows into fleeting specters of doubt and determination. The quiet calm of the morning carried the echoes of Karen's shrill admonitions like lingering ghosts. But today I was armed with clarity and resolve. I began my morning ritual brewing coffee, the rich aroma weaving a tapestry of reassurance through my kitchen. My dog Max followed the routine with eager eyes, oblivious to the undercurrents of human drama. His tail wagged a silent metronome to the rhythm of our morning calm. Steady. I envied his simplicity. Sitting at the table, I opened my laptop. The screen flickered to life, a portal to digital archives of every interaction with Karen. Every eye-rolling encounter, every clenched-jawed confrontation. Each file a breadcrumb leading to this exact moment. Her voice, captured in the police footage, filled the room a cacophony of misplaced authority and unjustified anger. This was no longer about my dog or her need for control. It was about drawing a line in the sand, a gentle but firm stand against tyranny cloaked as neighborhood concern. The HOA's code of conduct was a labyrinth of legalese, but I had mapped its intricacies, charted each rule and regulation she'd stepped over like invisible tripwires. With each infraction, another piece of a puzzle clicked into place. Her screeching diatribe, captured forever by the officer's body cam, was the final keystone. A subtle counter that was the goal I didn't want to crush. I wanted to correct. I wanted to reveal the hypocrisy with the quiet power of truth, a mirror held up to her own reflection. Her voice would be her undoing, and irony would be my ally. I prepared my documentation with the precision of an artist arranging screenshots, logs, and that damning footage in a neat digital dossier. It was in its own way a mosaic of her reign, each piece a reminder of her zealous overreach. My hand hovered over the mouse, a moment of hesitation in the face of inevitability. Once sent, there was no going back. But beneath the hesitation, there was relief. A long exhaled breath carried on the wings of justice. For a moment, the image of Mac's tail wagging in his innocent joy filled my mind. It was for him, too, for every bark silenced under her scornful gaze. Click. The email vanished into the ether, a digital arrow loosed into the heart of her empire. The day wore on with the deceptive normalcy of a placid sea before a storm. I went about my tasks mechanically efficient, each moment ticking by with the inevitability of a countdown. The neighborhood was quiet, as if holding its breath. Then came the call. A brief conversation. A hushed exchange. My heart raced as I listened. The voice on the other end, steady and assured. A decision had been made. Her membership, her badge of self-conferred authority, was revoked. I looked out the window. The sun now sinking, casting long shadows that stretched and grew like the roots of change. I imagined Karen receiving the news, her fortress crumbling in the silence of a single email. The irony tasted sweet on my tongue. Max padded over, resting his head on my knee, a silent testament to resilience and quiet victories. I scratched behind his ears, the simplicity of his happiness grounding me. Outside, the neighborhood seemed more alive, as if breathing a collective sigh of relief. And so in the end, it wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration. The balance of power righted the quiet strength of truth, having pierced the cacophony of her reign. I sat back, the echoes of yesterday now, a distant hum, the road ahead clear and unobstructed. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns on the floor. A quiet stillness settled over the neighborhood, but beneath it lay a current of unease. The episode with Karen had spread like wildfire, whispered between driveways and hedges, carried in the wind with the scent of freshly cut grass. It was the kind of story that held its own gravity, pulling in curious glances and whispers, hushed as the breeze. I stepped outside, my dog trotting beside me, oblivious to the silent orchestra of tension. His tail wagged lazily, a metronome marking the rhythm of our walk. The air was crisp, each breath invigorating and clear. Yet there was a tautness to the atmosphere, an unspoken anticipation that crackled like static before a storm. Neighbors emerged from their homes, drawn by an invisible thread. Eyes met mine, some offering nods of encouragement, others merely curious. The world felt hyper-real, each detail sharp as a knife. The leaves' rustle was unnaturally loud, the crunch of gravel underfoot exaggerated. A peculiar camaraderie blossomed, born from shared experience, as if the community had collectively inhaled and held its breath waiting. Karen's house loomed at the end of the street, its pristine facade masking the chaos within. The police footage had turned the tide, a quiet rebellion against her oppressive reign. Her window blinds were drawn tight. The house shuddered as if bracing against an incoming storm. It was both fortress and prison, a symbol of the control she desperately clung to. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. A woman who had woven herself into the fabric of authority, now unraveling in public view. The HOA meeting was set for the weekend, an event that promised to be charged with pent-up frustration and long-simmering grievances. Karen's outburst had been the spark, and the flames of change flickered in every conversation held in hushed tones over garden fences. As I made my way down the street, the weight of the neighborhood's unspoken support buoyed me. It was a peculiar sensation, a paradox of solitude amidst collective backing. My dog paused, sniffing at a patch of grass, and I took a moment to reflect. The weeks leading up to this moment had been fraught with tension, each encounter with Karen a test of patience and resolve. Her shrill voice, a siren of discord, had echoed through the neighborhood, yet now it was silent, a quiet void that spoke volumes. A neighbor approached an older gentleman with a gentle smile and eyes that held a glimmer of shared understanding. He offered a simple word, courage, before continuing on his way. It lingered in the air, a quiet affirmation that resonated deeply. It was all any of us could do after all in the face of an unyielding tide, to remain steadfast to hold our ground. Time moved sluggishly each day, stretching into the next, a slow dance of anticipation. The upcoming meeting loomed large, a focal point toward which all energies converged. It would be a reckoning of sorts, a moment when the community would find its voice no longer muted by fear or intimidation. Change was coming, carried on the wings of whispered hopes and the quiet resolve of a neighborhood united. And beneath it all, the irony persisted. A story that began with a scream was finding its resolution in silence, the calm before change, the quiet before the storm. The sun hung low in the sky, casting the kind of golden hue that made everything seem softer, gentler. It was the irony of it all, really. How such a peaceful setting could contain such discord beneath its calm surface. The neighborhood had returned to its usual rhythm, the hum of daily life, masking the undercurrent of change that was quietly unfolding. I watched from my window, the police footage replaying in my mind like a film reel stuck on loop. Karen's shrill voice, the way she had pointed an accusing finger at Dakota, my loyal golden retriever, as though he were some kind of criminal mastermind. The absurdity of it all juxtaposed against her manicured perfection had been a sight to behold. Her outrage was as misplaced as a snowstorm in June. But now, the real work began. The legal steps were quiet and meticulous, like a chess game where every move was calculated and deliberate. I had learned long ago the power of patience, of letting the storm rage and then dissipate, leaving clear skies for strategic maneuvers. My attorney, a sharp-witted woman with eyes like daggers, understood this well. Together we crafted a narrative that spoke of harassment, of a breach in the decorum that the Homeowners Association claimed to uphold. It was almost poetic, really. The same rules Karen wielded like a club were now the very foundation of her undoing. Her zeal for discipline, a double-edged sword, had cut her own tether. The HOA, once her fortress, now stood as a jury to her excesses. Her voice, once loud, demanding, above reproach, was now a whisper caught in the wind, struggling to find purchase. The legal proceedings were uneventful. Just a series of letters and meetings, each more telling than the last I attended with the composure of a monk. My expression a canvas of neutrality, though inside I reveled in the irony of the situation. Karen's expressions told stories, disbelief, indignation, fear, resignation. Her veneer of control was cracking, and the neighborhood watched with a kind of voyeuristic fascination. I found myself thinking of Dakota, his gentle eyes and unwavering loyalty. Despite the commotion, he remained unaffected, living in a world of simplicity and instinct. His faith in the goodness of people was untainted, a stark contrast to the human complexity around him. Then came the day of reckoning. The HOA meeting was a subdued affair, the usual chatter replaced by an anticipatory silence. Karen sat at the head of the table, her presence a shadow of its former command. Her membership was revoked, a unanimous decision greeted with the finality of a judge's gavel. The room exhaled, and it was over. Just like that. A quiet end to a loud saga. As I left the meeting, I felt a lightness in my step, a sense of justice served in a world that often forgot its own balance. Dakota was waiting for me, tail wagging, a beacon of joy and innocence. I knelt beside him, ruffling his fur, feeling the simple warmth of his companionship. The sun was setting now, and the sky bled into shades of orange and pink. The world felt right again. As I walked home, Dakota at my side, I realized how small victories could sometimes feel like the biggest triumphs of all. The morning sun filtered through the maple leaves, casting a gentle mosaic on the sidewalk. It was the kind of peaceful light that promised a new day, a day of change. Today was the Homeowners Association meeting, the one everyone had been whispering about, ever since Karen's outburst echoed through our quiet neighborhood. She had screamed at my dog with a venom that could have peeled paint, all because he barked once at a squirrel. The police called in her frenzied wake, recorded everything. Her words, her jabs at dignity, all laid bare. The footage had circulated faster than wildfire in a dry brush, igniting a community once lulled into passive compliance. As I walked to the clubhouse, I felt the neighborhood's pulse sync with my own. Each step resonated with a sense of purpose. It was as if the very air crackled with anticipation. Neighbors who had once merely nodded in passing now watched curious and hopeful. Karen's reign had been long and unchallenged, her grip on the HOA as firm as a gardener's on a stubborn weed. Until now, the community hall was crowded. Faces lined the room like a gallery of silent witnesses. Some wore expressions of quiet defiance, others of weary resignation. But all eyes flicked toward the front where Karen sat, her expression as rigid as her starched blazer. She seemed to be muttering something, perhaps a prayer or a curse, or maybe just the futile echo of commands she could no longer enforce. I took my seat, the wooden chair creaking slightly under the weight of the moment. The meeting came to order, but it was the tension that truly governed the room. Papers shuffled, and the air was punctuated by the occasional cough, a symphony of expectation. The agenda was brief and to the point. Karen's conduct. A simple line on paper, but it carried the weight of a community's collective sigh. The footage was reviewed, the damning clarity of it, undeniable. Her voice, once an unchallenged authority, now a shrill echo of overreach and entitlement. There was no need for fury, no call for vengeance, just a calm, determined examination of what had been allowed to fester for too long. One by one, voices rose, not in anger, but in quiet assertion. Stories of overstepped boundaries of rules bent to fit a singular vision. A tapestry of shared discomfort, woven into a narrative of change. Karen sat silent now, as if the fight had leaked from her very bones. The decision was swift, almost anticlimactic. Her HOA membership revoked with a finality that resonated like the slam of a gavel. No applause, no cheering, just the murmured relief of a community reclaiming its identity. As the meeting adjourned, the room emptied, each person carrying a piece of this small victory with them. I lingered, taking in the quiet transformation. The air felt lighter somehow, as if the very atmosphere had exhaled in collective release. Outside, the sun had shifted, casting long dappled shadows on the pavement. My dog sat patiently tail wagging with unperturbed joy. I knelt beside him, feeling the cool breeze ruffle his fur. Karen walked past a solitary figure. Now her presence diminished like a receding storm. For the first time in a long time, our neighborhood felt like a home again. A place where voices mattered, where even the smallest bark was heard and understood. I smiled a deep, contented smile as we turned and walked back down the sunlit street. A community restored and renewed.